I became unafraid to try something that I didn't know the outcome to. It's okay to be plural.
What did that unique environment teach you about creativity and survival that perhaps nowhere else could have?
That's a great question because...
Greg. DJ, ex-Apple software specialist, founder of Carmine Street Media, creating copy and licensed music. I want to ask about something that you've said. You call it the producer mindset, but walk me through it like I've never heard of it and tell me why I should be thinking like a producer.
Well, you know, this came about because I was a software trainer at Apple. So I train all types, as they say, you know, from people who are like professional musicians and, you know, doctors on using their Mac computers. But I also train grandmas, and I also train like, you know, 5-6-year-old kids in Apple camps. Well, I wanted to like impart that same feeling with using AI, you know, because what I've noticed is that people who've been in a producer type of role, they tend to take to AI a lot quicker, or a lot, dare I say, better in some instances than like people who don't either work in that kind of capacity, or they just don't have the idea of like they have to do everything themselves.
Right.
You know, so it's a little different kind of goal, you can say. And the producer mindset is if you treat yourself working on a project that you're getting the best things, the best tools, the best people involved into that project, that's going to help you get the best outcome.
I suppose adding to that, you said that we should treat AI like musicians,
Yeah.
right? But I want to know, what does that look like in the daily? How do I do that?
So in the same way, like a producer will look at someone and say, oh, that person can sing. That person, maybe they're better doing something else. You know, the same thing with like picking your AI tools. Like even though they can do a lot of the same things, some of them are just an edge better at certain things. You know, for instance, with me, I like Claude for writing. I like ChatGPT for like organization. I even like GenSpark for general concept development. So I'm kind of treating them almost like, you know, proto staff. And they work together.
Really?
You know, because these AIs, they know when the updates came out on the others.
Take me back then to the reason why you began DJing. I know you were brought up in Detroit.
Yeah.
Paint me a picture. The sights, the smells, the sounds that brought you into DJing.
Well, my year before I went to college at the University of Michigan, my parents moved downtown to a condo building. And I decided to go on a little adventure around it. And as I was walking around, I found this studio called KMS Studios. It's the studio for Kevin Saunderson. Kevin Saunderson is one of the founders of techno in Detroit. And at that time, you could just walk into places, you know, like you could just, hey, do you need anyone to do this and that? So that's what I did. I asked them, like, hey, do you need anyone to just help maintain the studio? And they actually brought me on board. And then there's another guy in Europe who's like pretty well known for techno, a guy named Jeff Mills. This was at the era when I was like too young to go out. So I couldn't go to clubs, but I could record the mixes off the radio. And what we would do is we'd take those cassettes and then go to the music stores and say, hey, put this tape in. And then they would put the tape into their system at the store. And then they would identify the songs for us because they had the records coming in. So it was a really cool like ecosystem at that time. And that's what I took with me, you know, in terms of like going to college and just, you know, eventually getting on the radio, doing my own mix show.
What did that unique environment teach you about creativity and survival that perhaps nowhere else could have?
That's a great question because you're right. Like that specific environment taught me that you have to reach out and see what's happening with people. What are people thinking? What are creative people thinking? You know, because there's so many people that I was, you know, getting in touch with that were just way further ahead on the track of life and creating music and stuff. So I always wondered like what they were thinking What would they do next?
I know I came across your interview with New York Zed podcast, and you spoke about dying, about taking real chances. But where did that all come from? What prompted you to speak about that?
You know, I became unafraid to try something that I didn't know the outcome to. I think, that tends to be that doing the reps, as they say in exercise, like, because if I had stopped trying to reach out to people, I wouldn't have had that success, like I would have just been, my growth would have been stunted in that sense,
What does someone who has taken real chances look like? How do they show up?
I think there's a lot of listening that goes into chance takers. The listener, take in the information and then maybe offer some information sparingly. I think a lot of people have the idea that they need to perform when they don't always have to perform. A lot of people aren't looking for entertainers. They're looking for people that can do the job, like, okay, you're fun and cool, but can you solve this problem for me? Some people aren't comfortable with that silence sometimes. Sometimes they like want to feel it. Okay. Now, like, but yeah, getting comfortable with that is an art.
Seeing which one of us would break first there. What are your ideologies, your values or principles that just guide everything that you do?
One thing I've learned recently is it's okay to be plural.
What do you mean?
And what I mean by that is, especially in today's day and age, a lot of us have been raised and brought up to represent the one thing that we do. But the reality is, especially with the way technology has given us so many opportunities, people can be professionally, legitimately good at few things, And in the case of me, for instance, you could say like the large umbrella that I represent is brand marketing. And have I done copy at a professional level? Yep, check. Have I done music at a professional level? Yep, check. Separately, they're not related. But overall, a brand needs both of them.
Fantastic. Greg, we have a closing tradition on this podcast, which is where the guest, regardless of who they are, answers this one question.
Ooh.
And that is, what is one message that you've never sent but you wish everyone would receive?
To be patient with your own growth and the growth of others. A lot of times when people speak, people often speak and reply to things with the intent of like, okay, I can't wait till this person stops talking so I can say what I want to say. Like it's rampant throughout this planet, I tell you. People are very they're not willing to listen.
Yeah.
Like some people want to hear themselves say something in a good amount of time and a nice response time back more than, hey, take that silent bit, be silent for a second like this. See, that's not bad, right?
Greg, thanks so much for your time. It's been fantastic to hear from you. Thank you for coming on podcast.
Thanks for having me, David.